Good morning, everyone. The other day, I said the fallout from this testimony has not even really begun. Like we're watching the beginnings of this. People are just waking up to how corrupt and how terrible our government really is. And I want to show you Bill Morneau run away from the cameras when he's asked, do you think your office's direct appeal to the Attorney General is appropriate in this case? And he runs away. But I want to show you, this is Jody Wilson-Rayboulud talking about how she was approached by Minister Morneau regarding the SNC Lavalin affair, and he was another minister to put pressure on her, inappropriately put pressure on her, potentially criminally put pressure on her, right? Here she is.
Still on September the 19th, I spoke to Minister Morneau.
Too fast. Sorry, everyone. That's my speed, not your speed.
They said that they will regroup and get back to you on that. Still on September the 19th, I spoke to Minister Morneau on this matter when we were in the House. He again stressed the need to save jobs, and I told him that engagements from his office to mine on SNC had to stop, that they were inappropriate. They did not stop. On September the 20th, my chief of staff had phone calls with Mr. Chen and...
Mr. Chen is the chief of staff, Mr. Morneau's chief of staff. So that is interesting. And Beetlejuice entered as she was speaking there. I thought that was kind of funny. So here's Mr. Morneau being questioned.
Deputy.
By, it sounds like Cheaty's big friend from The Good Place. But here's the question, and watch him walk away saying, oh, I don't know anything about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Minister had said that finance told her that they wanted to make sure that the director of public prosecutions understands the impact of doing nothing in the case. Do you believe it's appropriate for your department to seek influence in the prosecutorial function in this way, directly to the civil office?
I'm just not aware of anything in that regard, so I can't comment on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Morneau,
okay,
do you think that SNC Lavalin is too big to prosecute?
Was Bench's actions calling in...
So he realized that he was going to get follow-up questions and was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get out of here. I'm out of here right now. I mean, it was a very relevant question. In the testimony, Ms. Wilson-Rayboulud said very clearly that she was pressured by Minister Morneau, right? Finance Minister in the Paradise Papers, Will Ferrell lookalike Bill Morneau, right? Him, that guy. The guy who just ran away from the question. Interesting. Is this government shaking at its core yet? It should be. Here's Mr. Lametti saying, well, here's Frank McVitie tweeting, quote, Lametti says he didn't know Wilson-Rayboulud rejected cutting SNC Lavalin a deal when he took over. And here's the article. And the important part, the title is, Lametti says he didn't know Wilson-Rayboulud rejected cutting SNC Lavalin a deal when he took over. Attorney General David Lametti says he didn't know that predecessor Jody Wilson-Rayboulud had already made a decision not to cut SNC Lavalin a deal to avoid criminal trial when he took over the post and began learning about the matter before him. He was also mum on whether knowing that would keep him from reversing the decision. Quote, I had not. Lametti, when asked if he had known about the decision in an interview airing Sunday with the West Block's Mercedes Stevenson, quote, I was a Montreal MP, as I've said, so I was generally aware of the file, but I didn't have any specific knowledge. I mean, I had the knowledge that you and I both had reading the newspaper and seeing what's out in the media. Now, he's not just a Montreal MP. The SNC Lavalin headquarters is in his riding. It's just up the street. And well, here's a report from the Globe and Mail from October 22nd, 2018 that says, quote, SNC shares plummeted 14% on October 10th after the company announced the Public Prosecution Services of Canada had refused to negotiate a remediation agreement, or DPA, that would settle the outstanding fraud and bribery charges against it. The criminal proceedings against former executives, including Pierre Duhaime, who was CEO until suspicion of corruption forced him out of the company in 2012, are a separate matter and do not affect SNC directly. Great. Such an agreement, known as a Deferred Prosecution Agreement, or DPA, is common in some Group of 7 countries. It grants amnesty to a company charged with criminal wrongdoing in exchange for potentially hefty fines and pledges to adopt tough corporate reforms designed to prevent instances of fraud. Yeah, except that these instances of law-breaking, fraud, and bribery happened from 2001 to 2011, resulted in charges for specific people, and luckily for SNC, they were charged in 2014, had a special agreement with the Liberals to continue bidding on contracts until this whole legal matter got sorted out. Then in 2018, the Liberals, in the summertime, snuck criminal code changes into a budget bill, Bill C-74, go look it up, and that made bribery and fraud something that was just a misdemeanor, just a summary conviction. They could just pay a fine and it all goes away. Interesting. Wouldn't it be great if you could break a law and then have your lawyer talk to the government and make sure that there were no consequences until you were ready and until the consequences met what you were willing to do? Right? You were like, oh, you know what? I'll spend from 1 to 2:30 at the gymnasium in the school there every Saturday for the next couple of months, except for Christmases and holidays. Right? That's what we'll do. That's the agreement. And that's, oh, and I'll pay a fine too. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Yeah, that's what these guys are doing. But you and I can't do that. And if you own a company, your company can't do that. But SNC, they're big enough to do that. Interesting, right? Or criminal. Or fraudulent. Ridiculous. Shouldn't be happening. So, Mr. Lametti looks like is setting up to give a deal for SNC. And the newspapers are totally on board with this. Here's the Toronto Star's Heather Malik, quote, hand quotes, reporting SNC Lavalin controversy. Just put it to bed. And I'm not going to read any of this trash article, this garbage propaganda that is masquerading as news being published by the garbage Toronto Star. I'm not going to read any of it because it's worthless. But it's interesting that the full court press is put out to make sure that you think that this is about jobs. And it's not a controversy at all. It's not crony capitalism. It's not changing laws to suit companies that have the prime minister's ear. It's not firing an attorney general who wouldn't play ball. It's none of those things. It's totally above board. Just put it to bed. Go back to sleep. Don't pay any attention at all. Who is honestly reading this drivel? Seriously. Okay, The Guardian is reporting, and I'm not going to read this one either. I just thought the headline was hilarious. Justin Trudeau's disgrace is like watching a unicorn get run over. Ha! The political scandal engulfing the Canadian Prime Minister has outed him as not quite the hero we all believed he was. Well, yes, when he groped a woman and then blamed her for experiencing it differently, we all kind of lost the sheen. Welcome to 2019, The Guardian. Here's Brett Stevens saying the Globe and Mail is reporting, who knew Justin Trudeau may be more corrupt than Donald Trump? Wilson Raybould said she was subject to veiled threats in SNC Lavalin affair. So this is some commentary from a New York Times columnist, op-ed columnist, New York Times, MSNBC, right? Maybe that Canadian guy is worse than Trump. Here's CTV News reporting Butts to testify on SNC Lavalin next week. He wants to speak after watching Wilson Raybould. I bet you came out awful, Mr. Butts. It sounds like you were pressuring an attorney general inappropriately and potentially illegally. Do you like obstruction of justice and 10 years in jail? I mean... And finally today, Don Martin. I like his columns and his rants. They're excellent to watch, and he nails it on this one. The whole thing is great. I'm just going to read the top part here. He says, so we now have two different truths on the SNC Lavalin scandal, one altruistic, one inconvenient. The heroic version rolled out by the Prime Minister and parroted by his ministers is that political interference was all about saving jobs and the Montreal engineering giant. If spared criminal conviction, though, through a deferred prosecution agreement, SNC Lavalin would be saved with Canadian government contracts. The inconvenient truth, as articulated with devastating clarity by former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould yesterday, has it that saving SNC Lavalin was a political consideration as much as an economic one. Elections are coming. The Prime Minister is an MP from Montreal, and that justified political interference and deferred justice from criminal prosecution. Interesting. And yeah, bang on. Why is it okay for SNC to be able to break the law with impunity when you can't do it? I can't do it. Your company can't do it. My company can't do it. But they can do it? And Justin Trudeau's changing laws to allow it? Why can't we change laws to fix some of the major problems that we have in this country, like crony capitalism, or crony corruption, not capitalism, crony corruption in our government, crony politics and out brazen leaders, or again, air quotes, who can't answer a question, who run away from the press, when asked a question that they don't want to answer, right? Can we not pass laws to fix those major problems? No?